borders, but are as the executive and controlling the departments, will make sure that our department heads, take control. And that's why I say a department head can immediately say, we're ending DEI, no more DEI. And of course, the execution of that will be tough, but that's the concept, because that's how we have to start. That's our only power, without having legislative power.
As you mentioned on it, well, you mentioned on a lot there, and all of it's worth talking into for hours on end. We'll touch on the school, then we'll head into crime. So in terms of school, with everyone struggling for basic literacy, math, things of that nature, and Illinois seemingly, or at least not the people of Illinois, but the controllers of Illinois, what would you do to enable possibly school choice or just improving outcomes in Chicago Public School District? And granted, that's getting rid of a lot of waste and bloat, and it's all very much intertwined like a spider's web. But what key things do you think you would be able to do to make change in Illinois for the actual student and parents?
Well, I think that's the number one area where, even if we don't have a Republican legislature, I think we have, I think, a real opportunity to get school choice. And the reason is this, anybody who's seen my work on schools and stuff, and for the last 5 years, I've really dug into outcomes. I used to know, I still know a lot about the finances in education, and that's where I spent most of my time in my early work on Illinois. But my most recent work is on the outcomes, because I'm like, wow, look at all this money we spend, and yet most of the kids can't read. And that's certainly the case in Peoria and Decatur and Rockford and Waukegan and Cicero, and I could just go on and on. And so when I started to learn that in Decatur, just 2% of Black third grade children can read at grade level right now, it's like, man, if we can't build a coalition with a Black caucus and saying, let's fix this, right? And it's not about money. I'll show everybody, we spend more money than the entire Midwest. We spend a ton of money on education. And you look at the Latinos, whether it's in Waukegan or Cicero, you're talking about in the 10% and 15%. I think we can build a coalition, because, man, everybody wants kids to read. You can't be against literacy for children, right? And so I think that by exposing it, and again using the bully pulpit of governorship, and you know what, if they don't want to listen, we start putting it on billboards and saying, right, just 2% of kids in Decatur can read. Sue Scherer, for example, she's a Democrat, and she's on one of the education committees. In Decatur, she's in the legislature. So 2%. Sue Scherer won't allow school choice. Sue Scherer doesn't want to pass laws that make education better. And I think we have the moral case. We have we have the truth on our side. So I do think we can do that. So number one, you said, is school choice. I will be, and I promise this, I will be the champion, the biggest governor champion in the country on school choice. And of course, there's great ones out there already. So. But Indiana has universal vouchers. Anybody can access a voucher. Same thing in Iowa. Same thing in Ohio. Same thing in Arizona, Florida. We should have that. So I think we can get there. So that's number one. But we have to remember, even if we get school choice, our public schools aren't going away. Those kids in Decatur, most of them will still be in that school. And so we need to champion those kids as well. And so what we need to do is take what Mississippi's doing, right? Same thing as Florida. You have a law that says a kid can't go to fourth grade if he or she can't read in the third grade. And the reason why is because, right, we all know that if you can't read in the third grade, you're going to be in deep trouble the rest of your career. So we should have a law that says that, and that gets teachers, parents, unions, administrators, volunteers, everybody obsessed about a kid reading so that he or she can read by the fourth grade. And we should have that. We should also obsess about phonics. We used to teach children how to read using phonics. The actual sounds, and they moved away from that, and now most kids can't read with they can't read. So get back to that. There's a lot more to do on grading schools. For example, we should grade schools A, B, C, D, F, right, and hold them accountable. We don't hold schools accountable anymore. And the last thing I'd say is train teachers a lot more. Train them not in DEI, train them in good old fashioned literacy and numeracy and how to teach. And I don't mean that demeaningly. I just mean that I think we've gotten away from those core things. So there's a lot we can do, and I think that's something where it doesn't matter who's controlling. I think we can do this in a bipartisan way.
And you're spot on with that, because most of these issues aren't even 80-20 issues. They're 99-1, where
Exactly.
you have the select few fighting it just to fight anything for the sake of power, the same way you have people that would hold their breath if Trump said air is good. Some people will just resist you no matter what. However, when it comes to all of these policies, dare I say, and I hate saying it on a legislative level because it's a very modular term, but it's common sense. A lot of these issues should be actual common sense. So, yeah, I don't think you'd have a problem getting a coalition up for this. Now, in terms of crime, because you mentioned that after you were talking about schools a little bit ago, a lot of Illinois is soft on crime policies, no cash bail, raise concerns on public safety, so on and so forth, especially with the God awful Safety Act. So, assuming you can't just repeal the Safety Act right away, what acts would you take to actually make Illinois safer, even as you are in court fighting the Safety Act?
Well, I think number one, and this is so important, and I know that my Republican colleagues would agree with me on this. Restoring public safety in Illinois starts with having backing the police, and I will be unabashed supporter of our police force. Right now, you've got a guy like Brandon Johnson who not only hates them, he'd love to defund them. You got Pritzker, who's never backed the police, right? He begrudgingly he does anything to help the police. So these are people that don't help the police, and the police have to work in an environment where they're not supported. So number one is bringing up police morale, and to really bring up police morale, though, it's not just saying, hey, I support the police, but we have to help them so that when they take life risk arresting somebody, or they take reputational risk arresting somebody, when they bring in a bad guy, they need to know that the prosecutors are going to prosecute them. They need to know that the judges are going to sentence them. And today that doesn't happen, right? The prosecutors and the